Don Niccolo Belandi had ordered executions in 14 cities. He was the undisputed king of the Belandi crime family, a man who made politicians kneel and rivals disappear. But lying there behind the shattered marble counter of Café Luna, his Armani suit soaked in champagne and blood, he felt something he'd buried since childhood. Absolute vulnerability. Not for himself, but for the clumsy waitress now standing between him and death. He had dismissed her as just a coffee pourer, someone who couldn't balance a tray without apologizing 3 times. He was wrong. As the ornate cafe door exploded inward under a hail of automatic gunfire, Sophia didn't scream. She didn't duck. She caught his fallen Beretta mid-air with her left hand, while her right swept a second pistol from beneath her apron, a motion so impossibly smooth it looked choreographed. Niccolo realized too late, staring at the text on his phone from his brother Marco. "Wait for me." The woman who'd served him espresso for 6 months was about to show 67 mercenaries why legends never truly retire, and why the most dangerous enemy was the one he'd been waiting for all along. Tell me where you are watching from in the comments, down below. Niccolo Belandi checked his Patek Philippe for the 3rd time in 5 minutes, the irritation building behind his eyes like pressure before a storm. Marco was late. His brother was never late. Punctuality was a matter of respect in their world, and disrespect had consequences even blood couldn't erase. The afternoon sun slanted through Café Luna's tall windows, casting geometric shadows across the black and white checkered floor. Niccolo had chosen the corner table by instinct, the one that put his back to the wall and gave him clear sightlines to both entrances. Old habits. Even in his own territory, surrounded by his own people, a Don never sat exposed. "Excuse me, Mr. Belandi." He glanced up to find the waitress hovering at his elbow, that apologetic half-smile already forming on her face. Sophia. Something. He'd never bothered to learn her last name. She'd worked here for months, perpetually anxious, forever dropping things or forgetting orders. The owner kept her on out of charity, or so Niccolo assumed. "Your espresso," she said, setting the tiny cup down with trembling hands. A few drops sloshed onto the saucer. Niccolo stared at the spill, then at her. "I ordered this 15 minutes ago. I know, I'm so sorry, the machine was cold." He pushed the cup away without tasting it. "Bring me another. And this time, try to remember I'm not paying you to practice." Color rose in her cheeks. "Of course. Right away." She scurried toward the counter, nearly colliding with a chair on the way. Niccolo shook his head and returned his attention to his phone. No new messages. He typed quickly. "Where are you?" The cafe was unusually quiet for a Thursday afternoon. Only 2 other tables were occupied, an elderly couple sharing tiramisu near the window, and a businessman hunched over his laptop in the corner. Niccolo's 2 bodyguards sat at the bar, their suits bulging slightly at the shoulders where their holsters pressed against the fabric. Everything normal, everything controlled. His phone buzzed. "Stuck in traffic. Don't leave. Important news." Niccolo frowned at the screen. Marco never texted while driving. He was paranoid about phone records, insisted on face-to-face meetings for anything that mattered. The fact that he was breaking protocol sent a small spike of adrenaline through Niccolo's chest. The good kind, the kind that came before opportunity. "How long?" he typed back. 20 min max. Order me the panna cotta." Niccolo allowed himself a slight smile. Even in crisis, Marco thought with his stomach. He glanced toward the counter where Sophia was fumbling with the espresso machine, her back to him. "Waitress!" he called out. She turned, nearly dropping the portafilter. "Yes?" "My brother's joining me. He'll have the panna cotta." "Of course." She nodded too many times like a bobblehead. "I'll bring your fresh espresso first." As she turned back to her work, Niccolo noticed her posture shift almost imperceptibly. Her shoulders squared, her head tilted just slightly toward the window. If he hadn't been watching at that exact moment, he would have missed it entirely. Then she froze. It was subtle, the kind of stillness that came from training rather than fear. Through the cafe's front window, a white panel van rolled past slowly, too slowly for normal traffic. Niccolo's instincts, honed by 3 decades in the life, prickled at the back of his neck. Sophia's hand drifted to her apron pocket as she tracked the van's movement. Her fingers brushed against something concealed there. A gesture so quick, Niccolo almost convinced himself he'd imagined it. The van disappeared around the corner. She exhaled, a tiny release of tension, and returned to the espresso machine as if nothing had happened. But Niccolo was watching her now with different eyes. The trembling hands were steady as she tamped the grounds. The apologetic slouch had vanished, replaced by an economy of movement that looked almost military. He sat forward slightly, reassessing. The van was probably nothing, a delivery truck, a tourist lost in the neighborhood. But Sophia's reaction bothered him. Waitresses didn't track vehicles. They didn't carry weight in their pockets. They didn't move like... His phone buzzed again. "Marco." "You still there?" "Where else would I be?" Niccolo responded. The white van appeared again, circling back from the opposite direction. This time it slowed even more, practically crawling past the cafe's windows. At the counter, Sophia's head snapped up. Her eyes tracked the van with the focus of a predator. And for just a moment, one fleeting instant, Niccolo saw something in her face that made his blood run cold. Recognition, calculation, and beneath it all, something that looked disturbingly like resignation. She caught him staring, and the mask slammed back into place. The trembling smile returned. She lifted his fresh espresso with both hands, as if afraid she might drop it. But Niccolo Belandi hadn't survived 20 years at the top by ignoring his instincts. Something was very, very wrong. The window behind the elderly couple exploded first. Niccolo's brain registered the sound, a sharp crack like a champagne cork magnified 1,000 times, before his body could process what it meant. The husband's head snapped back in a spray of red mist, his wife's scream cut short as the second bullet punched through her chest. They crumpled together over their half-eaten tiramisu, a grotesque parody of an embrace. At the bar, both of Niccolo's bodyguards reached for their weapons. Neither made it. 2 more cracks, 2 more bodies hitting the floor with the wet thud of dead weight. The businessman in the corner dove under his table, laptop clattering to the tiles. Niccolo sat frozen, his hand hovering over his phone. This wasn't possible. Not here. Not in his territory, his cafe, his... The front door disintegrated under a hail of automatic gunfire. Wood and glass, transforming into 1,000 spinning shards. Through the smoke and debris, Niccolo saw shapes moving. Black tactical gear, assault rifles, professional stance. 6 of them. Maybe 8. His mind tried to count, but the numbers kept slipping away like water through his fingers. He should move. He knew he should move. 20 years of survival instinct screamed at him to run, to fight, to do anything but sit there like prey. But his body refused to obey, paralyzed by a single thought that looped through his consciousness like a broken record. Marco would come. Marco would fix this. Marco always. Something hit him from the side with the force of a linebacker. Niccolo's world tilted violently as he crashed to the floor, the air exploding from his lungs. The marble counter he'd been sitting beside erupted in a shower of white dust as bullets chewed through it. He tried to suck in breath, tried to understand what was happening, but there was weight on top of him. Someone pressing him down, shielding him. Sophia. She rolled off him in one fluid motion and kicked the heavy wooden table onto its side with a force that seemed impossible for someone her size. It slammed down between them and the door with a boom that rivaled the gunfire. Niccolo scrambled behind it on instinct, his back against the overturned marble, his ears ringing. "Stay down," Sophia said. Her voice had changed. No tremor, no apology. It was cold steel wrapped in silk, the kind of voice that expected obedience because it had earned the right. Niccolo watched in stunned disbelief as she reached beneath her apron and produced 2 pistols. Glock 9s, standard issue for people who killed for a living. Her hands moved with mechanical precision. Chamber check, safety off, stance perfect. The trembling waitress had vanished, replaced by something that moved like violence incarnate. The first breacher came through the shattered doorway in a tactical crouch, rifle sweeping the room. Sophia didn't hesitate. She rose above the table edge for a fraction of a second, just long enough to put 2 rounds through his face shield. The man dropped like a puppet with cut strings. His partner tried to track her position, finger already squeezing the trigger. But Sophia was faster. She ducked, pivoted, and fired from a different angle, one shot through the gap between vest and helmet. The breacher's rifle clattered to the floor as he crumpled. 2 down, she muttered, more to herself than to him. The cafe filled with the acrid smell of gunpowder and copper. Outside, Niccolo could hear shouting, commands being barked in clipped syllables, the sound of boots on pavement, engines revving. The remaining attackers were repositioning, preparing for another push. His phone was still in his hand somehow. The screen showed Marco's last message. 20 min max. Sent 12 minutes ago. 8 minutes until his brother arrived with reinforcements. 8 minutes until this nightmare ended. "We need to move," Sophia said, ejecting the magazine from one pistol to check the remaining rounds. "They're flanking." Niccolo found his voice, though it came out rougher than he intended. "Who the fuck are you?" She glanced at him. And for just a moment, something ancient and tired flickered behind her eyes. "Right now? The only reason you're still breathing." A canister bounced through the broken door, trailing white smoke. Flashbang! Sophia grabbed Niccolo's collar and yanked him toward the kitchen entrance as the world turned white and sound became a physical force that slammed into his skull. Through the ringing in his ears and the spots dancing in his vision, Niccolo heard her voice, calm as death. "Move or die, Don Belandi. Your choice." His legs obeyed before his mind caught up, stumbling after the waitress who killed like a demon, his phone still clutched in his hand like a lifeline to the brother who would save him. If he could just survive 8 more minutes. If Marco could just get here in time. If the woman pulling him through hell was really on his side. Too many ifs. Not enough answers, and the shooting had only just begun. The kitchen doors swung shut behind them, muffling the chaos in the dining room to a dull roar punctuated by sporadic gunfire. Niccolo's dress shoes skidded on the tile floor, slick with something he didn't want to identify. Sophia released his collar and immediately moved to the industrial stove, her movements precise and purposeful. "What are you?" Niccolo started. "Quiet." She twisted 2 of the gas burner knobs without lighting them, then shoved a metal prep table against the door. "That'll buy us maybe 90 seconds. Niccolo leaned against the wall, his heart hammering against his ribs like it was trying to escape his chest. His mind kept replaying the last 3 minutes on a loop. The explosions, the bodies, the impossible transformation of a clumsy waitress into a trained killer. None of it made sense. None of it should be possible. He looked at his phone again. 7 minutes since Marco's last text. 7 minutes closer to rescue. "They're Iron Syndicate," Sophia said, checking the magazine of her left pistol. "I saw the patches on their tactical gear." The name hit Niccolo like cold water. The Iron Syndicate. Dmitry Volkov's crew. The Russian outfit that had been pushing into his territory for the last 6 months. So this was it. The war he'd been expecting. Finally here. At least now he knew who to kill. Volkov finally grew a pair, he muttered, pulling his own weapon, a Beretta 92 FS from his shoulder holster. His hands were steadier now, the initial shock giving way to the cold clarity that had kept him alive this long. Sophia moved to the small window above the prep station and peered out at the alley. Her jaw tightened. "There's a problem. You mean besides the small army trying to kill me, they're using Belandi tactics?" She turned to face him, and the look in her eyes made his blood run cold. The breach pattern. 2x2, alternating high-low coverage. The flashbang delay before entry. Even the way they positioned their sniper overwatch. She gestured toward the dining room. "That's not Russian doctrine, Don Belandi. That's your family's playbook." Niccolo felt heat rising in his chest. "You're wrong." "Am I?" She moved closer, her voice dropping to something dangerous. "The snipers took out your guards first. Not you, not the civilians who could identify them. They knew exactly who to hit to leave you vulnerable. They knew you'd be sitting at that specific table. They knew enough." The word came out sharper than he intended. "Volkov's been watching us for months. He studied our methods, copied our approach. It's basic intelligence gathering." "Is it?" Sophia holstered one pistol and pulled open a drawer, retrieving a kitchen knife that she tested against her thumb. "Tell me something, Don Belandi. How many people knew you'd be here today? At this exact time? It's my cafe. I come here twice a week. Everyone knows that. On Thursdays, you usually come at 2 o'clock. Today you came at 3:15. She pointed the knife at him, not threatening, just emphasizing. "Who knew about the schedule change?" Niccolo opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. She was right. He'd changed his routine this morning when Marco texted, asking to meet. Only Marco had known about the time change. Marco and... no, absolutely not. "You're reaching," he said, his voice harder now. "The Iron Syndicate has resources. They could have people watching, tracking my movements. Hell, they probably have someone on my staff feeding them information. But that doesn't mean... look at their gear." Sophia cut him off, moving back to the window. Steiner optics on the rifles. Cry precision plate carriers. Level 4 ceramic plates. "You know what that equipment costs? Volkov's crew uses surplus Russian military gear and knockoff Chinese optics. This?" She shook her head. "This is top-tier American tactical hardware, the kind your family uses." The prep table blocking the door shuddered as something heavy hit it from the other side. Voices shouted in English, no Russian accents. Niccolo realized with a sinking feeling. Clean American English with the clipped precision of military training. "Volkov's hiring American contractors now," he said, but the word sounded weak even to his own ears. "He's trying to look legitimate, blend in." "Stop lying to yourself." Sophia grabbed his arm, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Someone inside your organization set this up. Someone who knows your security protocols, your schedules, your safe houses. Someone close enough to know exactly how to kill you." Niccolo jerked his arm away. "My family is loyal. We have codes, rules that go back 3 generations. Blood before business, always." "Then explain how they knew about the panic button under your table." She waited, letting that sink in. "I watched you reach for it when the shooting started. You pressed it, didn't you? He had. Muscle memory, trained response. And no one had come. The response time is 2 minutes, Sophia continued relentlessly. Where's your backup, Don Belandi? Where are the soldiers who are supposed to die for you? His phone buzzed. Marco. Almost there. Hang tight. Niccolo held up the screen like a shield. My brother's coming. He'll bring an army, and we'll sort this out. Something flickered across Sophia's face. Pity, maybe, or recognition of a truth she'd already accepted. Then we better keep you alive until he gets here. The kitchen door exploded inward in a shower of splinters and chrome, and the second wave poured through like a flood. If you are still listening, kindly like and subscribe to my channel. Your support means a whole lot to me. Thank you. The first attacker through the door caught Sophia's thrown knife in his throat before he could bring his rifle to bear. The second hesitated for a fraction of a second, fatal in close quarters, and paid for it when she put 3 rounds through the gap in his body armor at the armpit. He went down, gurgling. But there were more behind them. Always more. Sophia grabbed the industrial pot of marinara sauce simmering on the stove and hurled it at the doorway. The heavy pot struck the third man's face shield, scalding red sauce exploding across his gear as he screamed and stumbled backward into his teammates. The momentary chaos bought them seconds. Go! Sophia shoved Niccolo toward the service corridor that led back to the dining area. We can't get bottlenecked here. That's toward them, Niccolo protested. But she was already moving, reloading as she ran with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done it 1,000 times in worse situations. They burst back into the dining room through the side entrance. The air was thick with gun smoke and plaster dust. The elegant cafe transformed into a war zone. The overturned table that had saved their lives was riddled with bullet holes, chunks of marble blown away to reveal the steel reinforcement beneath. Bodies lay where they'd fallen. His bodyguards, the elderly couple, 2 attackers in tactical black. Through the shattered front windows, Niccolo could see more figures moving into position outside. They weren't rushing in anymore. They were being methodical, professional, setting up overlapping fields of fire to turn the entire cafe into a kill box. Sophia dropped behind the espresso bar as bullets chewed through the wood paneling above her head. Niccolo dove after her, landing hard on broken glass and spent shell casings. His shoulder screamed in protest, but he was alive, still breathing, still fighting. How many? He gasped. Too many. She rose up just long enough to fire twice, then dropped back down as return fire shredded the liquor bottles on the shelves behind them. Expensive whiskey rained down, mixing with blood and cordite. They're setting up a crossfire, front entrance, side windows, probably the back alley by now. Niccolo's mind raced through options, tactical scenarios learned from a lifetime of violence. They were pinned down, outgunned, running low on ammunition. In 2 minutes this would be over, and not in their favor. His phone buzzed against his chest. He fumbled it out with shaking hands, hoping for Marco's message saying he'd arrived, that salvation was here. 5 men out. Don't do anything stupid. 5 more minutes. An eternity. Sophia was moving again, impossibly fast, despite the bullets that snapped through the air around her. She grabbed the espresso machine's steam wand and wrenched it free from its moorings with a screech of metal. Superheated steam erupted from the broken connection like a geyser. "Cover your face," she barked. Niccolo barely had time to raise his arm before she kicked the machine toward the front entrance. It tumbled across the floor, trailing a cloud of scalding steam that filled the room with a white fog. Men screamed as the 200-degree vapor hit exposed skin, their tactical advantage disappearing into the artificial cloud. She used the cover to move, firing into the mist with precision that spoke of spatial awareness Niccolo couldn't comprehend. He heard bodies dropping, heard commands being shouted in confusion and pain. A figure materialized out of the steam to his left, tactical gear, rifle rising. Niccolo fired on instinct, center mass, the Beretta's recoil familiar in his hand. The man staggered but didn't fall, plates stopping the rounds. Before Niccolo could adjust his aim, the man's rifle swung toward his face. Sophia appeared like a ghost, plates from the broken table settings in both hands. She hurled them with vicious force. The first one shattered against the man's face shield. The second caught him in the throat above his vest. As he choked and stumbled, she closed the distance and put a round through his temple at contact distance. But more were coming. Through the dissipating steam, Niccolo saw them repositioning, adapting, learning. These weren't street thugs or low-level enforcers. These were professionals who knew how to kill and keep killing until the job was done. One of them circled wide, using the overturned furniture for cover, getting an angle on Niccolo's position. The Don tried to track him, but his magazine ran dry, with a hollow click that might as well have been a death sentence. The attacker rose from cover, rifle aimed at Niccolo's head, finger already applying pressure to the trigger. Close enough now that Niccolo could see his eyes through the face shield. Cold, professional, already moving on to the next target. "Marco sends his regards," the man said, his voice casual, almost friendly. The words hung in the air for a heartbeat that stretched into eternity. Niccolo's brain tried to process them, to understand what they meant. But before the implication could land, before the betrayal could crystallize into terrible understanding, the world exploded. The grenade detonated 6 feet away, behind the overturned marble counter. The concussive force picked Niccolo up and slammed him into the espresso bar like a rag doll. His ears didn't ring. They simply stopped working, all sound replaced by a high-pitched whine that felt like it was coming from inside his skull. Blood ran warm from his nose, his mouth, possibly his ears. Through the haze of shock and disorientation, he saw Sophia's mouth moving, shouting something he couldn't hear. She was pulling him up, dragging him toward the back of the cafe. Her face spattered with blood and plaster dust. The attacker who'd spoken was dead, torn apart by his own team's grenade. Friendly fire, Niccolo thought distantly. Sloppy. Marco would never approve of such sloppiness. Marco. The name echoed in his fractured consciousness, but the context was gone, blown away by the explosion that had stolen his hearing and nearly his life. Something important about Marco, something the dead man had said. But the words were lost, buried under the whine of tinnitus and the drum of his own heartbeat, and all Niccolo could do was stumble after the killer waitress who kept saving his life while his brother raced to do the same. 4 more minutes, just 4 more minutes, and Marco would make everything right. The entrance to the tunnels was hidden behind the wine rack in the storage room, a relic from the 1920s when Cafe Luna had been a speakeasy and the Belandi family had been smugglers rather than kings. Sophia found it with the certainty of someone who'd already scouted every escape route, shoving aside dusty bottles of Chianti to reveal the iron door set into the brick. Niccolo's hearing was starting to return in patches, the whine fading to a dull roar, punctuated by the muffled sound of his own breathing. He could hear gunfire behind them, closer now, the attackers regrouping for another push. His mouth tasted like copper, and his head felt like it had been used as a church bell. But he was alive. Sophia wrenched the door open, revealing a shaft of darkness that dropped into the earth. A rusted ladder descended into shadows that seemed to swallow the dim light from the storage room. The air that rose from below smelled of damp stone and decades of neglect. "Down," she commanded, already holstering one pistol to free her hand for the ladder. Niccolo followed, his dress shoes slipping on rungs slick with condensation. The descent felt endless, each step taking him deeper into the earth, further from the light and air and the world above where his brother was coming to save him. His phone was still clutched in his other hand, the screen showing no signal this far underground. They reached the bottom, a brick-lined tunnel that stretched in both directions, maybe 6 feet high and just wide enough for 2 people to walk abreast. Emergency lights, installed decades ago and barely functional, cast pools of sickly yellow illumination every 20 feet. Between them, darkness waited. Sophia moved immediately to the right, her pistol up and tracking. This runs 3 blocks north. There's an exit behind the old pharmacy on Castellano Street. How do you know that? Niccolo's voice came out hoarse, his ears still not fully recovered. She didn't answer, just kept moving with the confidence of someone who'd memorized the route. Because of course she had. Because nothing about this woman was what it seemed. Above them, muffled by earth and brick, came the sound of boots on the storage room floor. Shouting voices, getting closer. They'd found the entrance. Niccolo checked his phone again, still no signal. The panic that had been building in his chest since the first shots fired was starting to crystallize into something sharper, more desperate. I need to call Marco. He needs to know where we're going, where to send the extraction team. No signal down here. Sophia paused at an intersection where another tunnel branched off to the left. She listened for a moment, head cocked, then continued straight. And I don't think your brother's coming. The words hit him like a physical blow. What the fuck did you just say? She stopped and turned to face him, her expression unreadable in the dim light. They knew everything, Niccolo. Every single detail of your security protocol. The shift change for your guards. That happens at 3:30 every Thursday, doesn't it? Exactly when you showed up today, instead of your usual 2 o'clock. So they've been watching me. I already told you. They knew you'd be sitting at the window table. Her voice was patient. But underneath it ran a current of steel. The one you always choose. The one with sight lines to both doors. They had a sniper positioned with a perfect angle on that specific table before you even walked in. Niccolo's jaw clenched. I always sit there. Anyone watching would know. The panic button under your table. She took a step closer, invading his space. The one you pressed when the shooting started. How many people know about that button, Don Belandi? How many people know it connects directly to your emergency response team? And how many people would know exactly how to make sure that team never received the signal? His hand tightened on his phone, knuckles white. You're wrong. Am I? She pulled something from her pocket, a patch torn from one of the dead attackers' uniforms. The Iron Syndicate logo was clearly visible. Machine embroidered onto black fabric. She flipped it over. On the reverse side, nearly invisible unless you knew to look, was a second marking. The Belandi family crest. They're wearing your colors underneath, Niccolo. This isn't the Russians. This is your own people. No. The word came out flat, absolute. My family doesn't turn. We have rules, codes that go back. 3 generations, I know. She threw the patch at his feet. And yet here we are, running through tunnels while your own soldiers hunt you like a dog. Behind them, echoing down the tunnel, came the sound of boots hitting the ladder rungs. They'd started the descent, maybe 30 seconds before the first one reached the bottom. Niccolo grabbed Sophia's arm, his grip tight enough to bruise. My brother is coming. Marco would never. He's my blood. Your blood is trying to kill you. She wrenched her arm free. Wake up, Don Belandi. Why do you think they haven't just blown up the whole building? Why take the risk of a room-to-room assault when they could just level the place? Because someone wants to make sure you die. Someone who needs to confirm the kill personally. You don't know what you're talking about. But even as he said it, doubt was creeping in like poison. The tactical precision, the inside knowledge, the way everything had been perfectly calibrated to trap him. And Marco's texts, keeping him in place, telling him not to leave, buying time for... No, he wouldn't let her plant this seed. Couldn't let her turn him against the one person in the world he trusted absolutely. His phone buzzed, one bar of signal, flickering. A new message loaded. Where are you? Can't find you in the cafe. Give me your position. Relief flooded through him, washing away the doubt. He's here. Marco's here. He started typing a response, his fingers shaking. He'll send people down here, extract us, and then we'll find out who really set this up. Sophia grabbed his wrist before he could hit send. Don't! Get off me. If you tell him where we are, we're dead in 5 minutes. He's my brother! The shout echoed down the tunnel, too loud, giving away their position. Niccolo didn't care anymore. He's family. Family doesn't... The first flashlight beam cut through the darkness behind them, illuminating the tunnel they'd just left. A voice called out, professional and calm. Movement ahead. 2 targets. Advancing. Sophia released his wrist and started running, her footsteps echoing off the brick. Niccolo stood there for 1 more second, his thumb hovering over the send button, Marco's message glowing on the screen. Where are you? The flashlight beam swept closer, the sound of safeties being clicked off, weapons being raised. Niccolo deleted the message and ran after the woman who thought his brother wanted him dead, into the darkness that seemed to have no end. They emerged from the tunnels behind a condemned tenement building 3 blocks from the cafe, gasping in the cold air like drowning men breaking the surface. Niccolo's lungs burned, his legs trembled from the sprint through the underground maze, and his ears still rang with the echo of gunfire that had chased them through the darkness. Behind them, the pursuit had fallen silent. Either they'd lost the attackers in the labyrinth of Prohibition-era passages, or the hunters were regrouping, coordinating, waiting for their prey to surface so they could finish the job properly. Sophia scanned the alley with professional paranoia, her pistol tracking potential threats that Niccolo couldn't see. We need to keep moving. Find a safe house. Go to ground until... No. Niccolo pulled out his phone, relief flooding through him as full bars appeared on the screen. No more running. He scrolled through his contacts, bypassing the main numbers, all of them potentially compromised if Sophia was right about an insider. But there was one number Marco had given him years ago, a burner phone for emergencies only, never to be used unless everything else had failed. If this wasn't an emergency, nothing was. He dialed. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Each ring felt like an eternity. Then, Nico! Marco's voice came through, frantic, breathless. Jesus Christ, Nico, where are you? I've been trying to reach you. The cafe, there are bodies everywhere. Your guards are dead, I thought. The fear in his brother's voice cut through Niccolo like a knife. This was Marco, his baby brother, the one he'd protected from their father's rages, the one he'd trained to take over when the time came. The emotion in that voice was real. It had to be real. I'm alive, Niccolo said, his own voice rough. I'm out, Thank God. A shuddering exhale. I just got here 5 minutes ago. The whole block is chaos. Emergency services. Police. Nico, who did this? Was it Volkov? The Russians? I don't know. Niccolo glanced at Sophia, who was watching him with an expression that might have been pity. Maybe. It doesn't matter right now. I need extraction. Already on it. Marco's voice shifted, becoming harder, more controlled, the tone of a commander taking charge. I've got a helicopter inbound. Where are you exactly? Niccolo hesitated, Sophia's warnings echoing in his mind. Then he pushed them aside. This was Marco. Castellano Street, behind the old Moretti building. Okay. The sound of Marco breathing, thinking. That's 3 blocks from the cafe. Listen to me carefully. The streets aren't safe. I've got reports of hostiles still in the area, hunting. You need to get to high ground, where we can extract you clean. Where? The Residenza building, 5 blocks east of your position. You know it? Niccolo did. An old residential tower his family owned, mostly empty now, scheduled for demolition next month. Yeah. Get to the west rooftop. My chopper will be there in 12 minutes. Can you make it? 12 minutes. 5 blocks through hostile territory to a building with no power and probably no working elevators. But it was an exit, a way out of this nightmare, and it was coming from the one person Niccolo trusted with his life. I'll make it, he said. Nico! Marco's voice caught, genuine emotion breaking through. I'm sorry I was late. I'm sorry I wasn't there. This is on me. You're here now. That's what matters. 12 minutes, west roof. Don't trust anyone else. The line went dead. Niccolo turned to find Sophia staring at him with an expression caught between disbelief and resignation. You actually did it. You called him. He's sending extraction, helicopter to the Residenza building. The Residenza. She said it flat, toneless. The condemned tower with no cover, no alternative exits, sitting on top of a building scheduled for demolition. She holstered her pistol with deliberate care. That Residenza. It's 5 blocks away. We can make it. To the west rooftop, I assume? When he nodded, she actually laughed, a bitter sound that held no humor. Of course, the west roof. The one that faces nothing but open air and has 0 cover from any direction. Perfect killing ground if you wanted to make absolutely sure someone didn't escape. Niccolo's patience, already worn thread-thin by hours of violence and fear, finally snapped. Enough. I'm done listening to your paranoid theories about my family. Marco is sending a helicopter to get us out. We're going. It's a trap. It's extraction. Then why that building? She stepped closer, her voice dropping to something urgent and dangerous. Niccolo, think. Your family owns a dozen properties within 6 blocks. The Giordano apartments have a rooftop helipad specifically designed for landings. The old factory on Via Roma has 3 separate extraction points. Hell, even the cafe itself has a roof that could take a helicopter. So why the one building in the entire area that gives you no cover, no options, and no way out if things go wrong? Because it's close and it's empty. No civilians to get caught in crossfire if those bastards are still hunting. Or because it's the perfect place to finish what they started. She grabbed his jacket, forcing him to meet her eyes. The west roof is completely exposed, sight lines from every surrounding building. If you go up there, you're a target in the center of a shooting gallery. 1 sniper, 1 RPG, hell, 1 good rifleman, and you're done. Niccolo shoved her hand away, anger and fear and exhaustion coalescing into something hot and sharp in his chest. My brother is not trying to kill me. My brother is trying to save me. And I'm going to that rooftop with or without you. Then you're going to die. Maybe. He checked his pistol. 4 rounds left. Not enough for another firefight, but enough to make a last stand, if it came to that. But I'm not going to die cowering in an alley because some waitress with a hero complex has trust issues. He saw the words land, saw something flicker in her eyes. Hurt, maybe, or recognition of a truth she'd tried to bury. For a moment, he thought she might actually leave, might disappear back into whatever shadow world she'd come from, and let him face this alone. Instead, she checked her own weapons, her jaw set in a line that promised violence. Then I guess we're both idiots. You're coming? Someone has to be there to say, "I told you so," when your brother's helicopter shows up with a minigun instead of a rescue crew. She started walking east, toward the residenza, toward whatever waited on that exposed rooftop. 12 minutes, you said. 11 now. Then we better run. They ran through back alleys and side streets, keeping to the shadows, avoiding the main roads where police sirens wailed and emergency lights painted the night in shades of red and blue. Twice they spotted men in tactical gear, black-clad figures moving with purpose through the chaos, and both times Sophia pulled him into doorways, behind dumpsters, anywhere that bought them precious seconds of invisibility. The residenza loomed ahead, a skeletal tower of concrete and broken windows, 20 stories of urban decay waiting for the wrecking ball. The front entrance was chained shut, condemned signs plastered across the doors. Sophia shot the lock off, and they slipped inside, into darkness that smelled of rot and abandonment. Somewhere above them, a helicopter's rotors beat against the night sky, getting closer. 11 floors to climb. No elevators, no power, just stairs and darkness, and the sound of their own breathing as they raced toward either salvation or slaughter. Niccolo's phone buzzed one last time as they hit the 5th floor landing. "Marco, almost there. Can you see the chopper?" He looked at Sophia, her face streaked with sweat and gun smoke, her eyes holding a warning he refused to acknowledge. Then he typed back, "On our way up now," and kept climbing toward the light. The rooftop door burst open, and Niccolo stumbled out into the night air, his lungs screaming from 11 flights of stairs climbed at a dead sprint. The west roof of the residenza stretched before them, a flat expanse of cracked concrete and gravel, dotted with rusted air conditioning units and the skeletal remains of a water tower. The city sprawled beyond the edge, lights glittering like scattered diamonds. No helicopter, just empty sky and the distant sound of rotors that might have been coming closer, or might have been his imagination painting hope over reality. "Where is it?" Niccolo gasped, pulling out his phone. The screen showed 11:47 p.m. Marco had said 12 minutes. It had been exactly 12 minutes. Sophia moved to the edge of the roof, scanning the surrounding buildings with the intensity of someone reading a death sentence. "We need to leave. Now." He said 12 minutes. The floodlights hit them like the hand of God. Niccolo's world went white, his eyes searing with pain as industrial-grade spotlights erupted from 3 surrounding buildings simultaneously. He threw up his arm, stumbling backward, completely blind, utterly exposed. Through the white-hot glare he could hear Sophia cursing, moving, trying to find cover where none existed. She'd been right. Jesus Christ, she'd been right about everything. "Contact!" a voice shouted from somewhere beyond the lights. "Both targets on the roof." The first bullets arrived before the echo faded. Not the scattered fire of the cafe, but concentrated, professional volleys that chewed through the concrete around them. Niccolo dove behind an air conditioning unit as rounds sparked off metal and pulverized brick. His shoulder hit hard, pain lancing through his ribs. But he was down, he was covered, he was... The air conditioning unit exploded as something heavy caliber punched through it like tissue paper. Niccolo rolled away, his dress shoes slipping on gravel, his expensive suit torn and filthy and soaked with sweat and blood that might not all be his. Through the glare and chaos he saw them coming, rappelling down from the rooftops above like spiders on silk threads. 8 figures in full tactical gear, Night vision pushed up on their helmets because they didn't need it with the floodlights turning night into noon. They landed on the roof with practiced precision, forming a semicircle that cut off any escape back to the stairwell. Heavy assault team. Professional, expensive. The kind of crew you hired when you needed something done with absolute certainty. One of them raised a hand and the gunfire stopped. In the sudden silence, Niccolo could hear his own heartbeat, could hear the distant wail of sirens, could hear Sophia's breathing somewhere to his left. Don Belandi. The team leader's voice was flat, American, Midwest accent. You're ordered to stand down. Come out and this ends clean. Niccolo's hand found his Beretta, the weight familiar and useless against 8 assault rifles, 4 rounds against a firing squad. The math didn't work. Who sent you? He called out, stalling, hoping, praying for the helicopter that wasn't coming. Does it matter? It did. God help him, it did. Before he could respond, Sophia stood up. She rose from behind the water tower base like death personified, and for the first time since this nightmare began, Niccolo saw what she'd been holding back. The trembling waitress was gone. The competent fighter who'd saved him in the cafe was gone. What remained was something else, entirely. Something that moved with the absolute confidence of a weapon that had never known doubt. Get down! The team leader shouted. Sophia smiled. She moved. The first man died before his brain could process movement into threat. Sophia closed the 15 feet between them in a heartbeat, her pistol coming up in a draw so fast it looked like the weapon had materialized in her hand. One shot, angled up under his helmet, through the soft palate into the brain. He dropped like a marionette with cut strings. She used his falling body as cover, pivoting behind it as his teammates opened fire. Rounds meant for her tore through their dead comrade instead. In that half-second of confusion, she killed 2 more. Precise double taps that found the gaps in their armor with impossible accuracy. The team scattered, training overriding shock, but she was already moving again. She grabbed a frag grenade from the dead man's vest, pulled the pin, and hurled it, not at the soldiers but at one of the floodlights. The explosion took out the light and plunged a third of the roof into blessed darkness. She disappeared into it like smoke. Niccolo watched in horrified fascination as the widow went to work. She used the shadows and the strobing muzzle flashes as camouflage, appearing behind men who thought they had her position, putting bullets in backs of heads and sides of necks, anywhere the armor was weak. When her pistols ran dry, she took a rifle from a corpse and used it with the same casual mastery. One of them got smart, grabbed a flashlight, swept it across the darkened section of roof. The beam caught Sophia mid-stride. He fired, a clean shot that should have ended her. She twisted impossibly, the round passing through the space her torso had occupied a microsecond earlier, and threw her knife in the same motion. It caught him in the eye, the only vulnerable point on his face, and he went down screaming. 7 corpses in under a minute. The 8th man, the team leader, had maintained discipline. While his squad died, he'd been flanking, getting position, waiting for the shot. Niccolo saw him rise from behind a ventilation unit, saw the rifle tracking toward Sophia's back, saw the finger tightening on the trigger. "Sophia!" he shouted. She spun, bringing her captured rifle around, but she was a fraction of a second too slow. The team leader fired first, a controlled burst that caught her in the side, spinning her around, dropping her to one knee. Niccolo moved without thinking, his last 4 rounds spent in a desperate spray that forced the team leader to duck. It wasn't accurate, it wasn't skillful, but it bought Sophia the second she needed to recover. She came up firing one-handed, her other hand pressed against the spreading red stain on her ribs, and put 3 rounds through the team leader's face shield at 20 yards. The 8th man fell. Silence crashed down on the rooftop like a physical weight. Niccolo stumbled toward Sophia, his ears ringing, his hands shaking. She was still standing, but barely, her face pale in the remaining floodlights. Blood ran between her fingers where she pressed against her wound. "You were right," he said, his voice hollow, "about all of it. The trap. The..." Pain exploded in his shoulder as something punched through him from behind. He looked down in dumb confusion at the exit wound, at the blood spreading across his white shirt, at the way his arm suddenly wouldn't work anymore. Sniper. Of course. There was always one more. He fell to his knees as his legs forgot how to hold him. Through the growing haze of shock, he saw Sophia grab him, drag him behind the water tower base, her face set in grim determination, despite her own wound. The helicopter was coming now. He could hear it clearly, rotors beating the air, getting closer. But it wasn't coming to save him. It had never been coming to save him. His phone lay on the gravel where he'd dropped it. The screen was shattered, but still glowing. One new message from Marco, sent 30 seconds ago. Is he dead yet? And finally, after hours of denial and desperate hope, Niccolo Belandi understood the truth that Sophia had been trying to tell him all along. His brother had sent him to die. The helicopter touched down on the far side of the roof, rotors still spinning, kicking up clouds of dust and debris that swirled through the floodlights like ghosts. The side door slid open, and men poured out. More tactical gear, more rifles, more death wrapped in professional efficiency. But these ones didn't immediately open fire. They formed a perimeter. Weapons trained on the water tower, where Niccolo bled, and Sophia held pressure on both their wounds with hands that were running out of time. Then, a figure stepped out of the helicopter. Even through the pain and shock, and the growing cold that was spreading from Niccolo's shoulder through his entire body, he recognized the silhouette. The walk, confident and unhurried. The way he held his shoulders, the set of his head. 27 years of knowing someone, of loving them, of trusting them with everything you had. You didn't forget those details, even when your world was ending. Marco Belandi walked across the rooftop like he was strolling through a garden, his $5,000 suit immaculate, not a hair out of place. He stopped 10 feet from the water tower, surveyed the carnage. 8 dead elite operators. Blood pooling on concrete. 2 people who should have been corpses by now still breathing. He started clapping, slow, deliberate applause that echoed across the rooftop, mocking in its casual appreciation. "Brava," Marco said, his eyes on Sophia. "I have to admit, I didn't believe the reports. The widow, they called you. Ghost of Chechnya, the angel of Grozny, the woman who killed 17 Bratva enforcers in a Moscow hotel and walked out without a scratch." He gestured at the bodies. "But this is art." Sophia said nothing, just kept pressure on Niccolo's wound while her own blood soaked through her shirt. Her pistol lay 3 feet away where she'd dropped it, empty. The rifle she'd taken was somewhere in the darkness, lost when the sniper's round had found her. Niccolo tried to speak, but his throat was full of something thick and copper-tasting. He coughed, spat blood, tried again. Why? Marco's smile faded. He walked closer, flanked by 4 guards whose weapons never wavered from their targets. He crouched down so he could look his brother in the eye, close enough that Niccolo could see the resemblance. The same jaw, the same dark eyes, the same blood flowing through veins that had once meant everything. "Why?" Marco repeated the word like it was a curious specimen he was examining. "Because you were killing us, Nico. Not with bullets or bombs. but with your precious codes and rules and honor." He said the last word like it was a disease. "Do you know what the younger families call us? The dinosaurs, the relics, the old men clinging to a world that doesn't exist anymore. We're the strongest family in the city," Niccolo managed, each word costing him blood. "We were." Past tense. Marco stood, began to pace. "While you were holding Sunday dinners and refusing to work with the Colombians because they lack honor, the Volkovs tripled their territory. While you were enforcing your no-drugs policy, the Triads made 20 million in fentanyl in 6 months. While you were playing Don Corleone, the world moved on without us. So you hired the Iron Syndicate." Sophia's voice was steady despite the blood loss. "Used them as cover. The Iron Syndicate is me." Marco turned to her, something like respect in his eyes. "I've been building it for 2 years. Russian patches, Russian methods, but American money and Italian strategy. A shell company for the work that my brother's conscience wouldn't allow." He looked back at Niccolo. "I gave you chances. I brought proposals, new revenue streams, partnerships that would have made us untouchable. And every time you said no. Too risky, too dirty. Not our way. Those ways kept us alive for 3 generations, Niccolo said. Those ways made us weak." Marco's voice hardened. "The new families don't respect honor, Nico. They respect power, money, results. And they were starting to wonder if the Belandis were worth fearing anymore." He spread his hands. "So I had to show them. Had to prove that we could be ruthless when needed. Had to kill your own brother." The words tasted like ash in Niccolo's mouth. "Had to remove an obstacle." Marco's face showed no remorse, no hesitation. "You would have fought me every step, turned the old guard against me, split the family, started a war that would have destroyed everything our grandfather built. This way is cleaner. Tragic, yes. Beloved Don killed by Russian mercenaries along with his mysterious bodyguard. I step in, consolidate power, unite the family against a common enemy. By next month, I'll have absorbed Volkov's territory and doubled our revenue streams. You planned all of it." Sophia's voice held a note of professional curiosity. "The timing, the location, the witnesses. Down to the minute." Marco smiled again. "The cafe gave me the perfect setting. Public enough to be noticed, private enough to be controlled. The Iron Syndicate patches would deflect blame. The tunnels would funnel you here, to this roof, where there's no escape and plenty of plausible deniability. A desperate last stand against overwhelming odds." He gestured at the bodies. "Though I'll admit, you made it more expensive than I planned. Do you have any idea what Tier 1 contractors cost?" "About the same as your soul," Niccolo said. The smile vanished. "Don't moralize at me, brother. You've killed plenty. The difference is I don't pretend it's noble." He pulled a pistol from his jacket, a Sig Sauer, black and efficient. "I loved you, Nico. Truly. But I love our family's future more." He raised the pistol, aiming at Niccolo's head. His hand was steady, no trembling, no hesitation. Just cold calculation, wrapped in expensive fabric. "Any last words?" Niccolo looked at his brother, the baby he'd protected from their father's fists, the boy he'd taught to throw a punch, the man he'd groomed to inherit everything, and felt something break inside him that would never heal. "Yeah," he said. "You missed one thing in your perfect plan." Marco's finger tightened on the trigger. "What's that?" "You hired the wrong waitress." Sophia moved. She'd been faking the extent of her injury, keeping one hand free, waiting for Marco to get close enough and arrogant enough to make a mistake. Her hand shot out, and grabbed a handful of gravel, hurling it at the nearest guard's face. As he flinched, she rolled forward, impossibly fast for someone who should have been dying, and came up with the guard's sidearm. The rooftop erupted into chaos. Sophia fired twice, one guard down, another clutching his throat. Marco dove for cover, shouting orders, his perfect plan dissolving into gunfire and screaming. His remaining guards opened up, their rifles tearing chunks out of the water tower, but Sophia was moving again, using Niccolo's body as partial cover while she engaged with surgical precision. Through the pain and the noise and the growing darkness at the edges of his vision, Niccolo watched his brother scramble toward the helicopter, watched the widow cut down men who were supposed to be the best, watched his family destroy itself on a rooftop under the indifferent stars. His hand found his discarded Beretta, forgotten in the chaos. Empty, useless, but his fingers closed around it anyway. One of Marco's guards noticed, started to swing his rifle toward Niccolo. Sophia put 2 rounds through his chest. Then the slide locked back on her pistol. Empty. She was out. Marco saw it too. He stopped running, turned, raised his Sig Sauer with both hands, and proper stance, just like Niccolo had taught him when he was 16 years old. "I really am sorry," Marco said, and fired. The round that should have killed Sophia never found its mark. She threw herself sideways as Marco fired, but that wasn't what saved her. What saved her was the fireball that erupted from the cafe 3 blocks away, a massive explosion that lit up the night sky like a second sun, and shook the Residenza building hard enough to knock everyone off balance. Marco stumbled, his shot going wide. His guards turned instinctively toward the explosion, training overriding orders for just a fraction of a second. Sophia had already moved past them. She'd palmed something from one of the dead operator's vests, a flashbang, and now she triggered it with her thumb and lobbed it underhand into the cluster of guards. The roof strobed white, the crack of it hitting like a physical wall. Men screamed, dropped weapons, clutched at faces and eyes. Through the chaos and the afterglow of the cafe explosion, Sophia became a ghost. She moved through the disoriented guards with brutal efficiency, taking weapons from nerveless fingers and using them at point-blank range. No wasted motion, no hesitation, just violence distilled to its purest form. Marco fired blindly in her direction, backing toward the helicopter. 2 rounds, 3. The muzzle flash illuminating his face in strobes, fear and rage, and the dawning realization that his perfect plan had become his perfect nightmare. Niccolo tried to stand, his legs screaming protest, his shoulder a supernova of agony. The world tilted and blurred, but he forced himself up, forced his body to obey, because if he didn't move now, if he didn't act, Marco would escape. And everything, all the death, all the betrayal, all the blood, would mean nothing. Marco saw him coming. His eyes widened, pistol swinging around, but Niccolo was already diving forward. They collided in a tangle of limbs, the gun between them, both hands grappling for control. They hit the ground hard, rolling, struggling, 2 brothers locked in a fight that only one would walk away from. "Nico, please," Marco gasped, his voice strangled. "You killed me," Niccolo said, and he was crying now, tears mixing with blood and sweat. "You killed me the moment you made that first call." They rolled again, and Marco ended up on top, using his weight advantage to press the pistol toward Niccolo's face. The muzzle was inches away, coming closer. Marco's face above him twisted with effort and something that might have been grief. "I'm sorry," Marco whispered. "I'm so sorry, but I can't stop now. It's too late." "I know," Niccolo said. He brought his knee up hard into Marco's groin, a street-fighting move their father had taught them both, the kind of thing a Don would never use in a proper fight. Marco's grip loosened for just an instant, his face contorting, and Niccolo wrenched the pistol free. They stared at each other. Brothers, blood, everything that should have meant something and didn't anymore. Marco's hand moved toward something in his jacket. Another weapon, a knife, it didn't matter. Niccolo pulled the trigger. The sound was smaller than he expected. Intimate. Just for them. Marco's eyes widened, then softened. He tried to speak, but blood came instead of words. He slumped forward, his weight pressing down on Niccolo, and for a moment it was like when they were children and Marco would climb into his bed during thunderstorms, trusting his big brother to keep him safe from the world. Niccolo held him as he died. Behind them, the last guard fell to Sophia's borrowed rifle. The shooting stopped. The helicopter's engine continued its rhythmic beating, rotors spinning uselessly, going nowhere. Sophia appeared in Niccolo's fading vision. Her face pale from blood loss, but her hands steady as she rolled Marco's body aside and applied pressure to Niccolo's shoulder with professional detachment. "Stay with me," she commanded. "You don't get to die after I went to all this trouble." The explosion, Niccolo managed. The cafe. Gas main I rigged in the kitchen before we left. Remote detonator. Figured we might need a distraction. She pulled off her belt, fashioned a tourniquet with quick, practiced movements. "Your family's insurance will cover it." "My family," Niccolo said, and laughed, a wet, painful sound. "Don't have much of that left." "No," she agreed. "You don't." Sirens were wailing now, getting closer. Emergency services, police, probably federal agents too, given the level of carnage spread across 6 city blocks. The cavalry arriving too late, as always. "Shift's over, boss," Sophia said, and there was something almost gentle in her voice. "Time for both of us to clock out." She pressed something into his hand, a phone, not his own. "Speed dial 1 goes to your underboss, Tommaso. He's clean, wasn't part of Marco's play. He'll get you to a hospital and handle the cleanup." "What about you?" But she was already standing, already moving toward the roof access door, fading into shadows like she'd never been there at all. "Wait," Niccolo called. "I don't even know your real name." She paused at the doorway, silhouetted against the distant glow of the burning cafe. "Neither do I anymore," she said, and was gone. 3 weeks later, Niccolo Belandi stood in an Italian cemetery under grey skies and watched them lower his brother into the ground. The funeral was well attended. Politicians and criminals and people who blurred the line between both, all of them paying respects to a tragedy that everyone understood and no one spoke of directly. The official story was simple. Marco Belandi, promising underboss, had been killed during a Russian syndicate attack on his brother, a hero who died protecting his Don. There would be a statue, eventually, something tasteful in the old neighborhood. Niccolo's shoulder ached despite the painkillers, despite the surgery and the physical therapy, and the doctor's assurances that he'd been lucky. He didn't feel lucky. He felt hollow, like something essential had been carved out and would never grow back. He was the undisputed Don now. No rivals, no questions, no challenges to his authority. The other families had sent flowers and condolences, had sworn renewed loyalty, had promised support against the Russian threat that Marco had invented and then become. King of everything, ruler of nothing that mattered. The service ended. People filed past with murmured condolences that meant nothing. Tommaso stayed close, a loyal shadow, already handling the transition of power with the efficiency that would make him a good underboss if Niccolo could ever bring himself to trust anyone again. That evening, as the sun set over the city his family had controlled for 3 generations, Niccolo returned to Cafe Luna. The repairs were nearly complete. New windows, new furniture, new marble counter to replace the one that had been shredded by bullets. The bloodstains were gone, scrubbed away like the violence had been a bad dream. But the ghosts remained. Niccolo could still see the elderly couple at their table, could still hear the first shot, could still feel Sofia tackling him to safety. A new waitress approached, young and nervous, holding a menu. "Can I get you something, Mr. Belandi?" "Espresso," he said automatically. "And—" he hesitated. "Was there another waitress here before? Sofia?" The girl shook her head. "I just started last week, but someone left this for you." She pulled an envelope from her apron, plain white paper, with his name written in neat script. "The owner said to give it to you if you came back." Niccolo opened it with hands that had killed his brother, hands that would never be clean again. The note inside was brief. "No charge for the extra protection, but I'm keeping the tips." Below that, in smaller script, the old man behind the counter at Morelli's Deli, "Antonio, he's one of Marco's. Tommaso's clean, but watch your back. You're not very good at it." P.S. The espresso really was terrible. You were right to complain. Niccolo read it twice, then a third time, then carefully folded it and put it in his pocket next to his heart. The waitress had returned with his coffee, setting it down with both hands, nervous that she might spill it. "Thank you," he said, and meant it. He sat in the corner booth, not his usual table, he'd never sit there again, and sipped the mediocre espresso while the city moved on outside the windows. The widow was gone, vanished back into whatever shadows had birthed her. She'd saved his life and asked for nothing. Had disappeared before he could offer her money or power or any of the things that people usually wanted from a don. She'd wanted her tips. He almost smiled. Tommaso appeared in the doorway, phone in hand. "Boss, we need you. The Russians are requesting a sit-down, and the feds are asking questions about the weapons we recovered from—" "I'll be there," Niccolo said. 5 more minutes." Tommaso nodded and disappeared, leaving him alone with his ghosts and his coffee, and the weight of a crown he'd never wanted, but would wear anyway, because it was his now. Bought and paid for in blood. He raised his cup in a silent toast. To his brother, to his family, to the waitress who'd been so much more. To survival, however hollow it tasted. Outside, somewhere in the city, a woman with a dozen names and a lifetime of ghosts walked away from the Belandi family and their wars, her shift finally over, her debt finally paid. She didn't look back. Neither did he. The espresso was cold by the time he finished it, but Niccolo Belandi drank it anyway. It seemed appropriate somehow, an ending that tasted like ashes. The price of blind loyalty. In the world of power and family, Niccolo Belandi learned the hardest lesson of all. Loyalty without discernment is not virtue, it's vulnerability. His unwavering trust in blood made him blind to the dagger aimed at his back, while a stranger he'd dismissed and disrespected became his only true ally. The story reminds us that respect should be earned by actions, not assumed by titles or relations. Niccolo treated Sofia poorly because of her position, never seeing the warrior beneath the apron. Meanwhile, he elevated Marco beyond scrutiny because of shared DNA, never seeing the ambition that had rotted into betrayal. True strength isn't found in blind faith or unquestioning loyalty. It's in the wisdom to recognize character over convenience, to value competence over comfort, and to understand that the most dangerous enemies often wear the most familiar faces. Marco's downfall wasn't just his ambition. It was his belief that ruthlessness without honor could build something lasting. He forgot that empires built on betrayal inevitably crumble, because if you'll betray family, you'll betray anyone. And eventually, everyone knows it. Sophia, the widow, understood something both brothers had forgotten. Some debts transcend money and power. She asked for nothing but her tips, fought for nothing but her principles, and disappeared into legend because she knew the difference between a job and an identity, between surviving and living. The cafe was rebuilt. The bodies were buried. The throne remained. But Niccolo sits alone now, a king who learned too late that the crown means nothing if you lose your soul earning it. What would you have done in Niccolo's position? Could you have pulled the trigger on your own brother? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story kept you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button and subscribe for more intense action thrillers that'll make you question who you can really trust. Your next story is waiting. Don't miss it.
Совет. И почему же тогда люди, наверное, расходятся, разъезжаются, перестают быть вместе, раз это так важно? Наверное, из-за того, что вот нету вот этого как раз таки, наверное, какого-то отдельного совета, какой-то внутреннего чувства нужности этому человеку. Да, люди расходятся, потому что ты не получаешь каких-то тех чувств, которых ты нигде не больше не получишь. Не можешь получить. Ни за деньги, ни еще как-либо. И когда у тебя, наверное, нету этого чувства внутреннего, люди, наверное, потом расходятся. И потом люди, многие, наверное, попадают вот в эти депрессии. Помимо финансовых проблем, нереализованности, да, и еще семейные неудачи какие-то добавляются. Наверное, это было всегда у людей. Просто раньше, наверное, этому не придавали такой огласки, возможно. Да и раньше было чуть, наверное, возможно, проще. Я говорю, человеку надо было всего лишь выполнять свои функции какие-то. Да? Как бы человек мог сходить там, отработать, к примеру, на заводе, прийти, и он был спокоен уже. Что все, типа, он сделал все, что от него требуется. В наше же время ты этого не можешь сделать. И получается, помимо того, что ну вот оно от этого-то и все исходит на самом деле. Семьи от этого-то и рушатся. Да, от того, что когда ты понимаешь о том, что твоя нереализация в жизни, понятно, что это твоя вина, да, какая-то в чем-то. Что ты не смог себя найти. И помимо этого, если у тебя еще нет какой-то внутренней поддержки в твоей семье, то как бы это все и приводит к тому, что люди расходятся. И оба, наверное, остаются в какой-то такой дизморали оба. Да, в какой-то, наверное, все равно внутренней депрессии. Короче, и как же избежать этого всего, наверное, главный вопрос. Тут, наверное, несколько вариантов. В наше время, наверное, это наверное, не опускать руки никогда, в первую очередь. Если бы взять со стороны мужчины, да, то в наше время, наверное, главное не то, типа, сколько он зарабатывает, а главное, чтобы, наверное, не опускать руки. Потому что работа примерно плюс-минус вся одинаковая. Плюс-минус везде она одинаково оплачивается. Да, но хотеть и стараться чего-то большего и не опускать руки, наверное, это одно из самых главных вещей. Да, стараться и хотеть чего-то большего. И тут вступает, наверное, вот это вот как раз таки еще и семейная поддержка, да, любовь, нежность, да, какая-то, поддержка словесная. И это, наверное, все сохраняет в тебе мотивацию к стремлению, к жизни, к желанию добиться чего-то большего. Можно не хотеть ничего на самом деле, да, устроиться в какую-то организацию, зарабатывать 100 тысяч рублей, но тебе этих денег явно не будет хватать. И в оконцове ты опять-таки поймаешь, наверное, эту дезмораль. Потому что все оно по кругу крутится. И потом люди на СВО уходят, умирают за 5-7 миллионов рублей. И я не думаю, что это кого-то осчастливит. Ну, во всяком случае, данного человека точно это не осчастливит. Говоря именно о поддержке, что значит поддержка? Как она выглядит, поддержка эта семейная? Наверное, у каждого это, наверное, по-разному немного. В любом случае, каждому человеку нужны какие-то разные вещи от другого человека. Да? Всегда же отношения — это взаимный обмен чем-то. Да? И когда люди от друг друга этот взаимный обмен получают, будь то, это могут быть разные вещи.